friends. I know it's been a little quiet around here lately. Life has just been crazy this summer, and I've had to give my attention to some things behind the scenes. But I want to thank you for your patience and for continuing to be here. I'm really excited to finally share Diana's story with you. Her episode has been worth the wait. I also want to let you know that I've been dreaming about what's next for this community. My heart is for grieving parents to know that they don't have to walk this road alone, and I'm working on some new ways for us to connect more personally and encourage one another and build a community where support isn't just something you listen to, it's something we experience together. More on that soon. But for now, I'm so grateful you're here, and I hope Diana's story meets you exactly where you are. So we're going to step right into the intro that I recorded a couple of weeks ago, and I am sure that this story is going to bless you. See you soon. Welcome back to Good Mourning, Mom. Today's conversation is about something we don't often talk about, the way that grief changes and changes us over time. Our guest, Diana, has experienced two very different losses: the stillbirth of her daughter, Abby, one set of identical twins, and years later, the sudden loss of her son, Billy. Today, more than 25 years later, after losing Abby, Diana shares what those losses have taught her about faith, healing, and becoming the kind of person who notices others in their pain. As a life coach, she now spends her life helping people grow through life's hardest seasons, and I think you'll hear that wisdom throughout this conversation. Wherever you are in your grief journey, I hope this episode reminds you that healing doesn't mean leaving your loved one behind. It means learning to carry both love and loss with grace. Let's meet Diana. Welcome, Diana. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Julia. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being here. In fact, I think that you were part of the reason why this podcast exists in the first place, because our mutual friend, Christy, approached me with the idea for the podcast.
Yeah.
And I know that you were really instrumental in helping her with her grieving process. And yeah, I'm just really excited to have you here. I feel like you played a big role in how this came about in the first place. So,
Well, that is amazing to hear and very humbling. So thank you for
yeah.
those kind words. Yeah, grief is definitely something that I'm very familiar with, and
Hmm.
wish I wasn't. Wish we weren't part of the same club, right?
Exactly. Yep.
But teaches
Well,
us a
we're
lot
making the
here.
most of it anyway.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I think your story is really unique because you've experienced two very different kinds of losses over the course of your life. And I just hope that today we can honor Abby and Billy, but also explore what grief has taught you after living with it for so many years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely two very different situations and different ways in which even the grief is in what I've uh, experienced and lived through, and
Mm.
sometimes wasn't sure I was going to live through. But yeah, happy to talk
Yeah.
about that. Look forward
Yeah.
to our conversation.
Awesome. So let's go back to the beginning. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about your pregnancy with your twins? What was your
Yeah.
life like? What were you expecting life to look like?
Yeah, it was very surprising to find out that we were pregnant with identical twin girls. And we already had my husband, when my husband and I married, he had three boys that were 4, 7, and 9, moved in
Wow.
with us. And so we were expecting these two girls, and we had three boys. And my pregnancy was it was tough just because it was twins. So I was sick
Yeah.
a lot and things, but it was
Huh?
healthy pregnancy, nothing at all that prepared us for the sudden loss that we
Mm.
experienced. And
Wow.
happy to share just a little bit of that.
Yeah.
I had been multiple times, been sent to the hospital, thought that, anytime you call the doctor when you're having multiples, they send you to the hospital is what
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
decided.
Yep.
Um,
Been there, done that.
yes. So they ended up, I think it was on Halloween. I just remember it was on a Sunday, and that time I was about 6 weeks from their due date, and I was in labor that time, and they kept me in the hospital overnight, monitored the babies all night, and everything was great. They sent me home. They were able to kind of stop my labor, send me home, and then sometime in that 2 days later, my water broke. And sometime in that little 2 day period, Abby had what we now know she had a true knot in her cord, in her umbilical cord,
Oh,
and
wow.
it pulled and it cut off her all
Mm,
of her, oxygen and everything. So she was stillborn. And
mm.
even when I was taken in for the C-section, we did not know that that was
Oh my
happening.
gosh.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's so hard.
It's interesting too, just the way that I feel like God protected me,
Mm,
because I was very familiar with ultrasounds. I worked at a pregnancy center, so I was
mm,
around a lot of ultrasounds. And when they did a really quick scan when I was at the hospital that night, just to see the positioning of the babies to decide whether or not we were C-section or what, I
yeah.
noticed that one of the babies didn't have a heartbeat. But I
Oh,
thought, all these medical staff in this room,
uh-huh.
surely if there
Uh-huh.
was a problem, somebody else would have seen it. But I just really
Oh,
feel like it
wow.
was God's protection of
Mm,
me not just being in total fear and panic. I was already
yeah.
nervous enough, right? But
Yeah.
in fear and panic over what was going on. And so
Yeah.
because but I can still visualize and see
Mm,
that monitor, and there was no heartbeat. And I
wow.
knew that, but I just was able to put that out of my mind and
Yeah.
just realize I just really thought there's nothing wrong. Somebody else would
Mm,
have seen that. That's way more
yeah.
trained than me, but that wasn't
Yeah.
the case. Yeah.
Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible. And that resonates with me to a certain degree because with my daughter Ruby that passed away, she had a genetic disorder that we did not know about until she was gone and our son Isaac was born. It was in her medical records, but nobody told us.
Yeah.
So I am grateful for my uh, ignorance
Yes.
because I didn't spend the year anxious about her, and
Yeah.
I just, you know, there
Hmm.
are just times when ignorance really is bliss.
That's true. It's very true. I would also say sometimes it's just protection. So,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
bliss and protection. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good term for it.
Yes.
Um, okay, so what was it like hearing that one daughter had survived and the other one had passed away?
Well, if I could just say that, even I just have very vivid memories of being in the operating room, and I could hear I knew one baby was born, but I didn't hear a cry. I knew
Mm,
that I could hear them doing CPR, and I kept looking at my husband
mm,
for some answers, and
yeah.
he wasn't saying anything, and the anesthesiologist was also looking at me, not saying anything. Then the second baby was born, and I
Mm,
heard crying, but I knew I still only heard one. And so
mm,
I didn't, nobody really told me what was going on, but I was figuring it out just by the sounds that were going on. And so it
yeah.
was really a very odd space to be in because
Mm,
my daughter Allie, she was healthy. She was in the NICU, really more of a precaution than anything else. They were pumping
yeah.
her full of antibiotics and stuff just to make sure that what she had been exposed to, they were just being cautious. But
Mm,
she really did great. She wasn't in the NICU very long and got to come home. But it was a very it's hard to put words to it. My pastor used the word bittersweet, and I've
yeah.
always thought that was a really good word,
Mm,
because it was so tough. I mean, I was released to, not released, I was given a release to go to her funeral and then come
mm.
back to the hospital because I
Oh,
hadn't
wow.
been released yet. So, just a lot of like just feeling like a zombie,
Yeah. How long
where
were you
you
in the hospital?
5 days.
Okay.
And then she was actually, Allie got to come home the next day. So
Mm.
I honestly, like, I never left the hospital. We left the hospital together. So,
Yeah. Wow.
but yeah, I don't really, that word bittersweet is just where I land a lot of times. I don't know how else to describe it because how can you be so elated in one moment and so devastated in the
Yeah.
same?
Yeah.
Just really tough, really tough.
Yeah. That would be tough. And I can imagine you might also like feel guilty for being sad and also guilty for being happy. Like that the feelings would go back and forth because you do have one living child that is delightful and then you're
Mhm.
carrying the loss of the other. And I don't know. I for just for me, I would imagine feeling like, am I allowed to be happy right now? Or when you're looking at your living child, am I allowed to be sad about the other one right now? I
Yeah,
don't
I
know if
think
that.
all of that's very, very true and a lot of thoughts. But I think even in that space, I talk a little bit more into that permission maybe when we talk about Billy, but I think in that space, it was more like everybody pretended that Abby didn't exist.
Oh, wow.
We just move on and
Yeah.
focus on and be happy about this baby that you do have. Which
Mhm.
is wonderful. Of course. Yes, let's be
Yeah.
happy. We are happy. We are
Yeah.
happy about her. But, I had two cribs in the
Right.
nursery. I
Right.
had two of every outfit,
Yeah.
at home. Like I
Yeah.
had two daughters. So to pretend that one didn't exist,
Yeah.
I know it was just how they just didn't know what to do, so that's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to also say, sometimes I can be pretty negative about how people handled that. But I will also say, I still have boxes. I have a box of grief cards that would come in the
Mm.
mail almost every day, and a
Oh my gosh.
box of all of the congratulations cards. So,
Mm.
my mail, because that was, over 20 years ago, and that was, we got mail before, we didn't really have email and things like that yet.
Yeah.
So it was really, people sent a lot of condolences, but also congratulations. So usually if I got one from someone, I got
Mm-hmm.
another one
Mm.
also from that person. So
Yeah.
I think people really did the best that they could. They just didn't really, I mean, I didn't know how to survive through that either,
Right.
right?
Right.
People
Right.
don't know what to say or do a lot of
No,
times.
they don't. They don't. It's really hard to know well, I've talked about this before. As a culture, we're not very good at grieving with one
Yeah.
another.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
true.
that's a hard thing.
So true.
How has your surviving daughter experienced growing up knowing she has an identical twin sister who died?
Mm. Yeah, I think that was something that we really wanted to make sure that she always grew up knowing that she had a twin sister. So,
Mm.
I don't know that I could have done it any other way, because every year and all of the first, every birthday, when she started school, when all these first things are just were really tough because I always knew that there
Yeah.
were supposed to be two.
Hmm.
And so, I've always felt bad for her that,
Mm.
her mom is sad on her birthday.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
learned what things I need to do in order I always say I need to acknowledge Abby so that I can celebrate Allie. That's how
Mm.
I ended up feeling I needed to do. But I think earlier in her life, or maybe through her teenage years, it was a little harder for her. Probably unfair for me to completely answer that question for her these days, but I know it's something that always stays in the back of her mind, just like it does mine.
Mm.
But I think that, she's had tough times,
Yeah.
understanding that, I mean, sometimes even that, twins will sometimes have that survivor guilt,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I think I've heard bits and pieces of that throughout her life, but
Mm.
she's 26 now, and I feel like she's I don't again I almost feel like I don't get to answer for her. I'll just say
Hmm.
she has just evolved into a space that we will all, her and I think especially the two of us, just have
Mm-hmm.
a different bond with Abby than anybody else could have.
Yeah, of
Right? So,
course. Yeah, that
yeah.
makes a lot of
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
Looking back now, what do you wish that people had understood about grieving a stillborn child?
It's okay to say her name.
Mm,
I think
yeah.
that's one of the things. It's probably not just in stillbirth, but like it's okay to say her name and it's okay to acknowledge. I think it's different when I compare it to, the loss of Billy. I think it's different because we don't have memories with her. We don't have, like I
Yeah.
think you're grieving what could have been, what should have
Hmm.
been, what you thought it was going to be like. You're
Yeah.
grieving the future you didn't have, which is grief, right? I get that.
Right.
But it's different when you also have memories to go with it. And so I think
Yeah.
because people didn't know her, hadn't met her, she didn't, like I think it can make them almost feel like it's not, I never felt like people I always felt like people acknowledged that we lost a child, but I think they didn't acknowledge the pain that comes with a
Mm,
stillbirth. Like I
hmm.
held her,
Yeah.
I spent time with her. I dressed her before we buried her. Like I looked at her, I touched her. She was my daughter.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think that's one of the things. It's just like it's okay to talk about her,
Hmm. Hmm.
it's okay. I still
Yeah.
talk about her.
Yeah.
I wonder what it would have been like to have two daughters that were identical, right? Like I still, think about those things.
Mm,
And, and as Allie grew and her personality grew, I'm like, what would Abby's personality have been like,
mm, yeah.
So I think it's just, and also it doesn't go away,
Yeah.
like I still, like I said, Allie's 26 and I still on her birthday, of course I think about Abby. Of
Hmm.
course I remember that day,
Hmm.
the good and the bad, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that, I just really it's important to me that people realize she was my daughter. She
Hmm.
was my daughter.
Yeah. That's really interesting too, because that you have experienced grief from both perspectives of losing an infant where you don't get to share the memories and losing an older child where you do. Because um I've had guests from both sides of that, and I've wondered for myself, like I wonder what the difference, what kind of a just how is it different? How does it compare? And I think maybe you can shed some light on that.
Well, I think there's definitely, I mean, they feel like two different things to me totally.
Yeah.
Let me stick with Abby for just a minute. Like I think that it was just um again, I felt connected to her differently than even I would say even my husband,
Mm,
but I feel like I also I had a newborn I had to take care of,
hmm.
like I had
Yeah.
to figure out how to do all these things, but the grief part, I just feel like in all honesty, between the two, losing having a stillborn and losing a 20-year-old, I felt like for the most part, people supported us better, if I could say it that way,
Mm.
with the stillborn. They at
Huh.
least knew that it
Interesting.
was it was tough and it was hard and we lost a baby.
Yeah.
But they and the dinners and the this and the that,
Yeah.
all the things we
Yeah.
do, the tangible things that we do for people, the cards, like I mentioned, But I think that it was as devastating as it was. I think that it was people kind of expect you to especially because did still have a baby.
Mm.
I was supposed to just keep moving forward, right?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is also something I want to say too. It's interesting to me when I think about grieving in this space. I almost felt like a fraud a lot of times in my grief
Hmm.
because other people have a stillborn baby and they go home from the hospital without a baby, and I went home with a
Oh,
baby.
wow.
And
Yeah.
so I felt like a fraud, like,
That's
like it's
just
not same type of grief that it
That's
would be
so
for somebody else.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting because I feel like that is such a common thread in everybody that I've interviewed, that
Mm-hmm.
there's some kind of imposter syndrome that comes
Yeah.
along with the grief.
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced it, and people that, have had infant death or miscarriages or whatever it has been, there's some kind of sense of like, well, mine's not as bad as somebody else's, so I really
Yeah.
don't have the right, you know.
Right.
That's
It's
that's
crazy, but we
crazy.
do it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. That's so, oh man.
Mm.
I want to talk. I feel like I could do a whole episode on that someday.
Probably good.
All
Yeah.
right. So if you are ready, let's move forward to Billy.
Yeah.
So he was in your life before your twins were born,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
And
When my husband and I married, he had three boys that were 4, 7, and 9.
mhm,
And Billy was the 7-year-old.
okay.
So yeah, it was 10 years after the twins were born, that Billy was in a car accident. He was 20
Mm,
and died. And it was whew, yeah, when you talk about the difference between the grief, like I don't even know how to put words to it. I've tried multiple times.
yeah.
But it was I talk about with him, it was like, life is like going along, right? Just it's
Mm-hmm.
got its ups and downs, it's good, it's bad, it's curves, it's twists, but like it was like we just slammed into this brick wall.
Yeah.
Like it was so unexpected. I mean, so was Abby, which is kind of interesting even to use the language to say it was so unexpected. It was so unexpected when we lost her
Yeah.
too, right?
Right.
But
Right.
it just was, I don't, I just, all I can say is that the relationship that we had, the memories, the again, still you're grieving the future too of what his
Yeah.
life was supposed to be like, all of those things, and it just comes crashing down like all at once, and you're
Mm.
just like left there. And I just, our my husband called. He had gotten a phone call. Billy had moved out. He didn't live with us at that point, and he got a phone call and told us that he had died in a car accident overnight, and he
Oh my
called, told
gosh.
me, and I just remember just almost like you can't breathe. Like
Yeah.
there's a book that I had somebody gave to me at Billy's funeral that was really helpful for me, and they talked about one of the chapters was I can't remember the exact words, but something about like cinder blocks, like those big
Mm.
concrete cinder blocks, like being on a rope around your neck. That's what
Mm.
grief can feel like. And
Yeah.
I thought that is such a great description because it's like you can't get a deep enough breath in,
Mm.
and you almost feel hunched over,
Yeah.
just like it's
Yeah.
like that physical space that you're in. And I've
Hmm.
always thought that described well what those raw days felt like, just
Yeah.
like you just can't breathe, you can't, your brain doesn't work, you're just in such a fog. And that's what I remember, just feeling like I was just in such a fog. Like, yeah, it was just like absolutely nothing made sense what was happening around us,
Mm.
and I just, yeah, it was, and to go through that space, and listen, I'll tell you again, the people in our lives, man, they were so great in
Mm.
those days when you have, the funeral and the funeral
Yeah.
home and
Yep.
all of that. But I remember the morning after the funeral, I woke up. I don't know if I really slept, but my husband was finally sleeping.
Mm.
And I just remember going and sitting outside. It was still dark. And I just remember almost feeling like I couldn't breathe because
Mm.
everybody else's lives were going to go back to normal that day.
Yep.
And ours was never going to be
Right.
normal again.
Right.
And that felt so scary to me. And
Mm.
it was just, and I still had other kids to take care of too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, life doesn't stop. That's the thing about, when you're going through all of this, like it doesn't
Mm.
stop. I remember my husband even saying that when he went, when we lost Abby, I remember he went to the funeral home to make the arrangements. I was still in the hospital, and I remember him coming back and just saying, everybody's just driving and going on like normal,
Mm,
like they don't
right.
understand that she died, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember feeling that when we went to make the funeral arrangements for Billy, just like
Mm,
being in a car and just feeling like a zombie, and everybody's
right.
just busy doing their own thing and they have no idea what you're going through right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that the loss of Abby did it in any way help prepare you for that, or was it just entirely different and it
I
didn't?
think that's a really good question. And I've thought about this and multiple times throughout my life. And I would say nothing prepares you.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I will say is the process I went through when we lost Abby helped me understand that I wouldn't understand. There's not an answer. I
Mm,
can't figure out why. I don't know
right.
why she died. I don't know why he died. So I think I had already walked through that,
Hmm.
um, through therapy, through friends, through, pastors and ministers, like multiple people had helped me through that
Hmm.
process of understanding that I'm not necessarily going to have answers on this side of
Yeah.
heaven, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that was helpful that I didn't have to go through the why
Right.
again, even though you still do say why, but
Uh-huh.
you know there's not an answer to it.
Hmm.
And I think that part of it was a little, I'm not even gonna say the word easy because that's not true. But I understood that already. I'll just
Yeah.
say I knew that I didn't have to understand why this
Hmm.
happened. I
Yeah.
had to survive it, but I
Right.
didn't have to understand why.
Yeah. There's some peace in that.
Yeah,
There is some peace in allowing yourself to just sit with the question and let that
yeah,
be okay.
yeah, yeah. It's very true.
Yeah. One sentence in your intake that really grabbed me was grief has taught me the importance of noticing others and their pain. Can you
Mm.
tell me more about that?
Yeah, I don't ever, let's see, how do I say this? A lot of times, we can talk about how, things have changed us. I read a book called More Beautiful Than Before, and it was really just a book on a bunch of stories of grief
Mm,
and pain and tragedy, but how we can become more beautiful than before if we
mm,
allow those things to change us. And I don't know that I even realized how much these hard things were changing me until I started to see other people in their pain. And I, in the past, probably overlooked it either out of my own fear and insecurity of not knowing what to say or do,
sure.
or, just simply like it just wasn't something I noticed. And so now to notice someone else, especially like in grief. Like I feel like it just opened my eyes. I feel like that is one thing my heart has softened,
Mm,
a lot more compassion for people, and I just see them differently. And I know that I can't fix anything that they have going on, but there is
yeah.
something about sitting with someone that gets it and understands
Hmm.
that feels different, just feels different, even if
Yeah.
there are no words exchanged sometimes. And so
Right.
I just feel like I feel like if I were to, I have, I I'm a Christian. I grew up in church and in, like I feel like I could have given you all the answers to all the things, from a
Mm,
biblical perspective or whatever. But, there were certain scriptures that I really struggled with,
hmm,
after both of these losses, but I would say in particular, like when it happened, I just remember thinking, I can't do this again. We have two kids buried in the same cemetery, like
mm,
that's not
yeah.
okay. That's not
No.
okay. That's not normal. That's not how it's supposed to be.
Right. Right.
But one of the scriptures that everybody talks about all the time, Romans 8:28
Mm,
says that God can bring good out of any situation for those who love him and are called according to his purpose, right?
right. Right.
And I just remember thinking, how can you bring good out of this?
Mm,
I mean, how can you bring good out of this?
yeah.
And now that is scripture hangs in my office and
Mm,
in my living room because what I realize is he didn't make something like that be a good thing,
Right.
but he brought good out of it in the way that he has changed me through this.
Yes. Yeah.
And again, I like to use the word for me. It's just really softened me and
Mm,
helped me have eyes that see differently. And
mm,
I'm obviously not perfect in that, but I just feel like I'm not afraid of people's grief. I know the things I thought. I know the things I said.
right.
I know that feeling. I know that desperation and that out of control and so
Hmm.
I'm not afraid of that when other people are in that space.
Yeah.
And I think that has been, yeah, just I don't run from that. I usually run to that if I know when you feel that sense of urgency to be there for somebody, like I don't turn away from that. I go
Yeah.
towards, yeah.
What would you say to someone who wants to be able to minister or be there for somebody who is grieving?
Well, you don't have to have the right words.
Yeah.
It's just show up, just
Mm,
show up. One of my favorite stories that I tell, there are a lot of things that happened in those moments of the raw days when Billy died, but the thing that I still vividly remember the most is a friend that showed up that
mm,
stood on my front porch,
hmm,
just cried. And she said, I
mm.
don't know what to say and I don't know what to do, but
Yeah.
I know I'm supposed to be here.
Wow.
And I think that is the epitome of how we show up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not going there to fix it. You
Yeah.
can't. You're not going there to have the perfect words. There aren't any.
Mm,
You're just going there to be. And
mhm,
I really appreciated I felt like there were few people that could do that, could just
mm,
be and let me be how I needed to be.
yeah.
What that might change, from moment to moment.
Hmm.
But the ones that could allow that, give me, we talked earlier, and I said I'll talk more about that permission to be how I need to be. That's one of the things I tell people now. Like
Yeah.
you have permission to be how you need to be. So laugh when you need to laugh, cry when you need to cry, yell when you need to yell. Like just be how you need to be
Yeah.
instead of thinking that there's this, almost pressure to be a
Hmm.
certain way when
Yeah.
you're going through those spaces. Yeah.
Mm.
So I love the people that can just show up and not feel like they have to fix you.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too often people miss the opportunity to show up because they feel like they have to have the answer. And
Hmm.
just to know that you don't. You don't
Yeah.
have to have it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I really like there's a website called whatsyourgrief.com.
Uh-huh.
And it really helps you like it from if you're the griever, they have,
Hmm.
you click on that and it takes you to all these different things. But then there's for if you're helping someone who's grieving, I think there are a lot of tools in
Mm.
that space too. But I remember reading a blog that they had on there that I just thought was really interesting because the author just really separated grief and loss. And
Hmm.
what she did was she talked and she explained that grief, we grieve because we have a loss, but the source of the pain is actually the loss itself. Now, let me make a little bit more sense because what, as she went through that, it was very profound to me that grief is our natural human response to how
Yeah.
we process the loss. And
Uh-huh.
I think that's, I know you've been through some certifications and things. You probably understand this even more than I do in some ways, but
I wouldn't say that.
um, but it's when, it's that space of like when when you have that sudden loss, especially and the world just no longer resembles what you once knew it to be.
Hmm.
Grief it can be almost your companion as you're just trying to figure out all this pain that's been
Hmm.
involved with that loss. And so,
Right.
and so her point was don't fight against the grief,
Yeah,
actually
definitely.
invite it in,
Yeah. Yeah.
listen to what it's teaching you about yourself, about other
Hmm.
people, about the person you've lost, and also about the new reality that you're going to live in.
Yeah.
And, And when I think she kind of wrapped that up by just saying that, grief isn't the enemy, it's actually part of our growth and our healing, which sounds
Yes.
so, it just sounds like that's the opposite of what we think. But,
Right. Right.
because people try to shove grief down, they try to do it, but it's
Mhm.
actually part of your growth and your healing to
Yeah.
grieve. And I think that's really important for us all
Yeah.
to recognize and
I
see.
think so too. I've actually been experiencing a little bit of that recently because there are some things that, I still need healing from, some griefs in my life that just are not quite fully resolved and that I'm still carrying. And I've found myself coming to the place lately where okay, I feel it's almost like I've gotten to the point where I recognize when the switch is flipped,
Mhm.
when the trigger point happens, and I know what's coming, and and the anxiety and the pain is so heavy, but at
Mm.
the same time, there's a part of me that's saying, God, will you please take this out of me? There's another part of me that is looking at the grief and saying, thank you for being here because you are showing me some really valuable things. And both
Yeah.
of those things are true for me at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And I also love that you said they're both true at the same time because that's another thing that I think I've learned through all of these years of processing all of this is you can hold both.
Mm-hmm.
We think that you can only hold one thing. Like I can hold, the anger that I have over this as well as the sadness. Like I
Yeah.
can hold them both. I don't have to choose one. I
Right.
can hold them both,
Right. Right.
and but I can also in the same way I can hold joy
Mm-hmm.
when things are happening because, I think we hit on this earlier, but there's that almost guilt when you feel joy.
Right.
I could tell you a story of the first time I remember laughing and then realizing I was laughing and
Yeah.
started crying, not just a little bit crying, like
Mm.
sobbing, like
Mm.
like I felt terrible. I mean, it was like from the depths of my soul. I thought there's
Wow.
nothing that should ever make me laugh again.
Oh my goodness.
And, that was 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And, I don't feel the same anymore, but I
Mm-hmm.
remember what that felt like in those
Mm-hmm.
moments. But it's okay to hold them both.
Yeah.
And I think that took a while for me to understand that I could hold them both.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And that also makes me think of, there is this space where as you're kind of going through like you're surviving, right? Because that's what we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
We have, or I guess we don't have to, but I chose to survive even though there were times I didn't think I could or even wanted to. But I think that what I learned as I was going through all of this, like, what does this look like now? I just didn't realize that what was happening was how much of this meant I was changing. And,
Mm-hmm.
that was really when I look backwards, hindsight's always 2020, but when I look
Mm-hmm.
backwards, I see just how so many things and we talk about grief and we have a tendency to just only talk about death, but I'm pretty sure that and not pretty sure, I'd say I am very sure that grief is a part of a lot of other journeys too, whether it's
Yeah. I think so
divorce
too.
or loss of
Right.
job or
Right.
I mean there's so many other things, and I think that what it's done is help me be able to see that just see people in I don't really want to say broken spaces, but just in a space that, is really tough and
Mhm.
I just want to be able to care for them in the
Yeah.
way that I
Yeah.
wanted to be and needed to be cared for.
Right. So now you are a life coach.
Yeah.
And how did your grief journey lead you to or did it lead you to that, do you think?
Well, um, let me say it like this. So I'm a leadership coach is my official title.
Okay.
I'm a leadership coach, but they're similar. They're very similar. So I would tell you I say a lot of times I'm a personal and leadership coach, okay?
Okay, okay.
But I would just say that it really is still from the space of just really wanting people to, hmm, I think I just want people to be able to live like uh, in the healthiest space that they can, you
Mm,
know? And so, yes, my grief journey is has really helped me grow. It's helped me understand. It's helped me search. And so I feel like I get to do that alongside people now.
mhm.
Sometimes, the obstacles that are in the way are painful and hard things, whether
Right.
it's, in their job or in their personal life. Leadership coaching a lot of times leads you, starts from a place of professional space.
Yeah.
But I believe that growth is it's a personal journey that can then also lead into your professional life too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it all starts with what's going on in you. And so sometimes it's really about the painful things that people have been through
Mm,
that have got, that have even put them in a place where they're searching for a coach.
right.
Yeah. So,
That's so true. Um, what do you notice in people today that you might not have noticed before your own losses?
um, well, I think that one of the things that stands out when you ask me that question is just like, how people can give you an answer and you're like, there's way more to that.
Yeah.
I think I can see that in
Mm,
people's faces and in their
mm,
eyes a lot of times now. So, and I get to ask questions and be
yeah.
curious about that and, just try to, help them pull that out. I was meeting with a lady one time and she was giving me very superficial answers to some things. And I could tell,
Yeah.
and I just said, hey, I really would. I just want you to know, like, this is a safe space and you can just say what you need to say. Like, you don't have to have the right answer or the politically correct, and it was like giving her permission to do that, just
hmm
like all
hmm
of the barriers came down and the tears
mm
started and then we got
Wow.
where we really needed to be.
Yeah.
So, but I also think I can do that now in a way that doesn't feel like it's invasive or
Mm.
pushy,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
because there were people that, if I am honest, like there were people that were way too invasive and I remember people coming around that I'm like, I don't even know you that well,
Right.
or
Right.
we haven't spoken in years, and I appreciate that you're here, but you don't need to sit on my couch for 3 hours. You know what I mean? Like leave. I appreciate, but that's really like know your space.
Yeah.
But I think that those moments really did make me aware of how people can invade you when they think they're being kind and doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Hmm.
I don't want to do that to other people.
Yeah. It's it's kind of interesting. I don't even know how to say articulate this, but it's interesting that one person can show up and just their presence is irritating and you want it
Yes.
gone. Another person can show up and they don't have any answers, but their presence is exactly what you needed.
Yeah, so true. So true. But
Yeah.
if I could just speak into that, Julia, I can tell you now, especially in my space of leadership coaching, it's
Mhm.
because the focus, like, let me see if I can make this make sense. When you're focused on yourself in a
Mhm.
conversation,
Right. Right.
then the other person feels that.
Right.
But
Right.
when you are focused on the person that you are there for,
Mhm.
and you don't have to have any words or anything, like the person can feel that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I was
And
just thinking
so,
that
yeah,
it's really all about the humility of the person that
yes,
is coming into this space.
yes,
Because the
yes,
if you're there because you feel like, oh, I'm doing a good deed and I'm being
yes,
here, then
yes,
we feel that. And if
yes,
you're
yes,
there with humility, knowing that I think
yeah,
people that are coming in with humility are probably thinking, well, what am I actually doing and how can I actually help? But that's the
yeah,
kind of attitude that grieving people need.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
I remember reading a book, read a lot of books. I love to oh, that's a terrible way to say it, but it's helpful to me to hear other people's stories and how they have survived. We'll say it that way.
Mm,
It's
mhm.
hopeful, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I read a book one time when the lady talked about her son had passed in a tragic accident, and she said that she remembered like sitting there in those raw days, and friends were coming in and out and doing all these things for her. But she said, and I just loved this phrase. She said, I realized that they did not understand what they were teaching me in that moment.
Mm,
And she was evaluating her own self, and she said, I've been a drive-by friend to a lot of people when they've been
mm,
in pain.
yeah.
And here I have these people that are around me right now that are actually taking care of my family and doing all these things. And you know, she said, I don't want to be a drive-by friend anymore.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I think that was really good. And I've thought about that a lot, you know, that phrase, because I did that so much to people in the
Mm,
past too. And it's really out of my own fear, afraid of saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. So
yeah.
you hope they don't need anything, you know?
Right, right.
And yeah, I just thought that was really insightful
Yeah.
wording for her to have,
Mhm,
like especially during those moments of
mhm.
just tremendous grief. Hmm.
Yeah. There's also the phrase that people use so often when, and they mean well, but there's, I think some people will say, well, call me if you need me. A griever isn't going to call, for the most part. We're not going to call, and we don't know, partly because we have no idea what we need.
Yeah. Here's my story about that.
Okay.
When my so I don't really remember time very well that summer that Billy died,
Hmm.
but I do remember that my daughters at that time were 9 and 10,
Mm.
and because we did have another daughter, that just
Okay.
so people understand, we had another
Right.
daughter after the twins, so a year later.
Hmm.
And I always say that Madison didn't take Abby's place, but she helped fill the void.
Right.
God knew what we needed.
Hmm.
And so, but we were walking into church on a Sunday morning sometime that summer, and I was barely functioning. I mean, I don't remember a whole lot
Right.
about that summer, but I do remember my daughter was 10, and she looked at me in the parking lot at the church on the way in and said, "Mom, please don't cry." And
Oh,
and she said, "We haven't had milk for a few days, and I haven't
oh
been
my
able to have
gosh.
any cereal or anything." And of course I cried. But I just remember thinking two things in that moment. First was, I don't, how did I not know that we don't have any
Mm,
milk?
right.
I have these other kids that need me. But
Mm,
then I also remember in that same thought thinking, where are all those people that
mm,
said, if you need anything, don't they know? Don't they
yeah.
know? I don't know
Mhm.
what I need, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I tell people when I'm, talking to people that, what do I do? Take bread and milk and coffee,
Yes.
like
Yes, absolutely.
just like don't ask what they need, just take
Hmm.
them something,
Hmm.
like I didn't know we didn't have milk. I didn't
Yeah.
know my kids couldn't have cereal. I didn't know, and
Yeah.
the other thing that I say is, like our other kids deserved a break from
Mm-hmm.
watching us grieve.
Hmm.
And I wish people would have taken them out for
Hmm.
ice cream or did some things. I mean, at the time, I didn't know that. I wished that. But
Yeah.
when I look back, I do. I
Hmm.
wish that they would have been able to do that. I
Hmm.
remember taking the girls to the library that summer, just me. And I just remember sitting in the library, and the whole time we were in the library, I was crying.
Mm.
And they're like looking at books and stuff, and people are like looking, and I just sitting there crying the whole time. And I'm like, that had to have been so hard for them,
Yeah.
They were so young and but you survive the best you can,
Hmm. Hmm.
nobody ever said, "Are you okay?" Which
Right.
I'm kind of glad they didn't, to be really
Yeah.
honest. But nobody did because we're so
Yeah.
afraid of that stuff,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Mhm.
And talking about other kids that need us in those moments too. One thing that I think I have mentioned on another episode before, but I was talking with somebody about a counselor about something tough that I felt like was coming up for me and the kids, and I was so scared about what they were about to walk through. And what he said to me has stuck with me and really helps is that we're not supposed to, like, our kids are going to go through hard things.
Hmm.
And so our job isn't to protect them from the hard things, but to help them know how to navigate through those hard things and become stronger because of it.
Good.
Yeah.
It's very good. Yeah,
Yeah.
so true.
So, as someone who coaches people, what do you think is one of the biggest lies that people believe after tragedy?
That there is there let's see, how do I say this? That you're supposed to go through these quote stages of grief in certain ways,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
I think that we misunderstood what all of that was actually supposed to mean. And
Hmm.
I had someone give me this perfect representation, just a little visual of what grief is. And so it says it's a line, it's a dot with a straight line, and another dot, and it says how we
Uh-huh.
want grief to work, okay? So just a straight line, and this is how it goes.
Yeah.
And then it says, how grief actually works. And there's another dot and another line, and then this big scribbly mess, right?
Yeah.
And I think we just need permission to know it's a mess. It's a
Yep.
scribbly mess.
Absolutely.
And but what I love about that drawing too is at the after this you have this big scribble, but there's this tiny little arrow that comes out on the other side of that.
Mm,
And it's just a reminder to me when I look at that, it doesn't always feel the way it did in the
mm.
beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
I, while it's still messy and there are still moments when I go back into the mess, but the mess, but I get to that arrow a lot faster these
Hmm.
days.
Yeah.
And I really like the thought of grief being like a wound that has scar tissue that is built up over it. So when you first have that wound, it's very painful and tender and sore.
Hmm.
But as scar tissue starts to build, it feels different. It
Hmm.
doesn't ever go away,
Yeah.
but it feels different.
Yeah.
And that gives me hope.
Hmm.
And it gave me hope when I heard that years ago, and I see that to be true now.
Mm,
And so I use that example a lot when I talk to people that are in that space that just feels like I'm not going to survive this.
mm.
And I just tell them it doesn't always feel the way it feels right now, which is
Yeah.
hard to believe when you're in that space,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's true.
Yeah. So we talked about a lie that people believe. What is, in your opinion, what do you think is one of the biggest truths that can begin to set people free?
Hmm. Well, my immediate thought, as soon as you asked me that question, was that God didn't do this to you.
Mm,
He allowed it, and while in some ways that doesn't feel like it's a truth that will set you free, it is a truth that will set you free,
yes, I agree.
because I hear people blame God a lot for the
Hmm.
hard things that they
Hmm.
go through. And I just don't believe that's what scripture tells us. He doesn't do these things, but he allows them to happen. And
Hmm.
I don't like a lot of the verses that kind of make me cringe, like, that his ways are higher than mine and or that suffering produces perseverance and perseverance, like I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
like those. I don't like those things. But those are actually very freeing scriptures for me.
Yes.
That remind me that hope comes from the suffering, the
Hmm.
perseverance, and the character that's developed. And that's, I do find comfort in those verses now.
Hmm.
I also caution people like if you're anything like me, like I grew up in church. I knew all the things that people were going to say did say to me, but
Mhm.
sometimes I just didn't want to hear it in those
Right.
moments,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like I know the truth. I knew the truth, but it didn't always feel like it was helpful the way some things were shoved at me in
Mhm.
really painful moments but again, I think it was people trying to fix me,
Mhm.
and
Right.
couldn't fix me. So yeah.
No, no, there's no fixing.
Yeah, no fixing. Yeah, can't fix it. You can't fix it.
So it's been 26 years since Abby and 16 since Billy.
Hmm.
Looking back over all these years, what gift has grief given you?
Definitely a softness, definitely empathy, and compassion
Mm,
for other people, and courage. I
mm,
just will say
mm.
courage. I'm not afraid to walk into someone's hospital room and
Yeah.
hold their stillborn baby,
Mm,
and look at their baby. And I'm not afraid of being around someone that has that anguish that's coming out of them while they're wailing. I don't love it. But
yeah.
I'm not afraid of it.
Mm,
So I think it's given me, that's a gift, to be able to walk into those spaces instead of
mm,
run from them.
mm. That is beautiful. Yeah. All right, we're going to do some rapid fire here. I want you to complete these sentences as we're
Okay.
closing. Today, grief feels.
Today grief feels lighter. It's life-changing, but it does feel lighter than it used to.
Hmm, okay. Abby has taught me.
Abby has taught me to really see other people, especially when they have maybe grief that isn't as apparent to everyone. Not everybody knows I lost a baby. So it's really helped me. Abby has really taught me to see other people.
Hmm, I love that. Okay, next one. Billy would want people to know.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting. Billy would want people to know, I think some of the things he said to me the week before he died, and
Hmm.
that he called me just to tell me that he understood that parents have to be really hard on their kids sometimes when they're
Oh,
trying to
wow.
get them to do the right things, and but he ended that conversation, and I've always felt like the Lord just gave that to me the week before he died to
Hmm.
say, I know it's because you love me so much.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think that's what Billy would want us to know.
That's awesome. That's so that's so beautiful. I'm glad
Mm,
you got to have that conversation with him.
me too. Me too.
Yeah. All right, next one. One thing every grieving parent deserves is.
To be able to say their child's name, like I just think people don't know what to do with that a lot of times.
Mm,
And to hear their child's name, and maybe that's even more important. It
mm,
means so much to me when I hear someone say Billy's name or Abby's
yeah.
name. Yeah.
Yeah.
So hear their
Yeah.
name. Hmm.
Yeah, I totally identify with that. I love when people talk about Ruby. I love remembering her. I love
Hmm.
it when I get to share her story with someone new.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, last one. Hope looks like.
Hmm. Hope looks like the people that step into that space with you, that really can just walk into that space of grief with you and not try to push you through it, not try to fix you and not try to tell you it's okay and it's going to be okay, but it's hope looks like the people that just show up and do that continuously. That's what hope looks like to me.
Awesome. Okay, I do have one more question. It wasn't officially part of the rapid fire, but in closing, if someone listening buried their child yesterday and someone else buried theirs 20 years ago, what would you want both of them to hear?
Mm. I I think I would want them to hear that their lives mattered, that their child's lives matter. Abby, I never got to see her take a breath, but her life mattered.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
mattered so much, you know?
Definitely.
And I remember standing over Billy's casket thinking, for what, God? Like he's 20.
Yeah.
Why? You
Yeah.
know? And but his life mattered. I learned a lot of things from him,
Mm,
in his life.
mm,
And I also would I don't think it feels good when someone tells you this when you're in the midst of raw grief, but
yeah.
I do believe that you get like what you're going through now is you get to go and it's going to be somebody else's survival guide later on,
Mm,
like
yes.
I think that is it doesn't feel good to hear those words, people say it in different ways like God's going to use your pain, it doesn't feel good in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But man, there have been so many times that I have had the privilege and the honor to walk alongside someone in that
Hmm.
space, and it heals my heart a little bit
Yeah.
more every time. It's
Mm,
not, and I just think I wish someone would have been able to do that for me.
mm,
I mean, I've sat in hospital rooms and helped people understand what questions they're going to have to answer from the funeral home
right.
about their stillborn baby.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
I've had, like nobody walked me through those things. I just had to figure those out. We just had to figure those out. My husband had to figure this out with me, right?
Yeah.
But I think, you know, there is something that can come of what you're going through. You don't know
Mm,
how it will be used in the future.
yeah.
And in those moments, it heals my heart a little bit more every time I get to the privilege and honor of being in that space with other people.
Yeah. That's beautiful. All right. Well, Diana, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for
Yeah, thanks.
sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you for bringing me on, and thank you for what you're doing. I
Yeah.
know that especially in those early raw days, like to hear other people's stories mattered
Mhm.
so much to me
Yeah.
because I thought it gave me hope that if they made it through, I could make it through too.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and I needed to hear as many of those stories as I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that seems to be interwoven throughout your story is that this grief that you've carried has enlarged your capacity to love others.
Mm, yeah.
And I think that's a really
Even
beautiful thing.
even named my business Love Well.
Exactly. Yeah.
My
So,
coaching business is Love Well because, and it really comes from the space of I don't think that we know how to not only love ourselves well, but love other people well.
mhm,
And I think that is just something I'm constantly trying to do better,
mhm,
be better at is understanding myself and why do I feel the way that I do so I can love myself better, but
mhm.
also so that that allows me to love other
Yeah.
people more.
So
Yeah.
can you tell people where a little bit about your leadership coaching and how to find you?
Yeah, so I do like I said, it's personal and leadership coaching. So, and I always say everybody leads somebody because people say I'm not a leader. Well, everybody leads somebody. You lead yourself, you may lead your family, you may have a position or a title where you lead a team, but this is really about that doing that work on self-awareness and
Mhm,
also being able to, apply that and understand, a lot of things. So I do trainings and I do workshops and I do a lot of individual coaching or group coaching. And so you
mhm.
can find me at lovewell.com, www.lovewell.com.
Okay. Thank you. And as a personal recipient of Diana's wisdom,
Hold on, pause. I just
pause.
told you, it's love well to lead well.
Oh,
I said it wrong. It's love well to lead well.
way to
Yes, it's
promote yourself.
lovewelltoleadwell.com. Yes.
All right.
Let me
I
start
was
that
going to
over. I
say,
changed it somewhere along the way. Yes.
and I could just say that Diana has helped me through some things that I have been contemplating a few times and really has a lot of wisdom and insights to share, and I appreciate her a lot.
Thank you.
And also, friends, if today's conversation reminded you that you don't have to carry your grief alone, I would love to walk with you through that. Through Good Mourning Grief Coaching, I help grieving parents process their loss and find hope again and learn to carry grief without letting it define their future. So once again, thank you, Diana, for being here. I really enjoyed hearing your story and talking with you. And thank you, listeners, for listening again. And we'll see you again next time. And in the meantime, remember that mourning is still mothering and your love still matters. See you next time.